Alright, so you guys have absolutely no idea how much trouble it's been getting this video out for you guys. Now, granted, part of this is my fault, because I procrastinated for like 3 months or something. Has it been that long? I don't know. I'm just throwing out numbers, because I have no perception of time this year, because everything is so weird all the time. But just since I actually started putting it together, I have lost the raws for this video. Was it only twice? It feels like it was more than twice, but it was only twice. So this is the third time I'm recording this audio, and by extension this video, which is just fantastic. So if it feels like I'm rushing a little bit through some of the information in this one, and if it feels like I'm a little annoyed in this one, understand that that's why. It's because, man, my voice is going too. Understand that that's why. It's because I've done this so many times that it feels mundane doing it again. It's not because I'm actually mad about anything, and I'm trying real hard not to let this affect the actual quality of this video. I'm just letting you guys know. Mostly because I think it's fun. It's funny, right? It's funny that happened to me, right? Or am I just that self-deprecating? Anyway, this theory is based on one of my old episode revisits, Steven Revisverse, which is something that I do need to start getting back to more regularly, where I alternate between revisiting a couple episodes of the show in a video and then revisiting some of my old material, my old theory material in a video, in an attempt to go back and look at Steven Universe more closely from the perspective of someone who has seen the entire show. And I will try to remember to link that video in either the description or up in the little corner card thingy-majigger. But here is the moment where I had the revelation that led to this theory. Have we ever seen other statues anywhere in any Homeworld installation ever? Did we see any statues on Homeworld? Oh, we did, didn't we? Oh, I have an idea. I have an idea of what those statues might be, and it's not good. And a lot of you guys immediately guessed exactly what this theory was going to be about, but I still feel like I want to present some evidence for it here. My thesis being, my dogs are making all kinds of noise over there, which is fantastic. They didn't do that the first 2 times. My thesis is essentially that the reason the statuary in the Lunar Sea Spire looks so weird is because those statues were actually actual living gems whose purpose was to be statues. That as the Lunar Sea Spire fell into disrepair over time, those gems wore out and died, left forgotten by everyone, including the rebels who fought, at least to a point, for the freedom of gems like them. Because while the crystal gems were definitely way more progressive than Homeworld was in regards to things like that, they still have a problem with seeing other gems as people. Like, I would argue Garnet and Amethyst are better at it than Pearl is, but their attitude towards things is still a little strange. It's still colored by their past history. I like how they didn't think it was weird that Lapis's mirror was powered by a gem until it was revealed that gem could communicate back to them. And granted, I think that's probably because the gems that are used as power sources aren't sapient, usually. But I don't know that for sure. Maybe they are, and they're just not supposed to be able to talk back through whatever interface they're plugged into. But it's shown more egregiously through things like the gem shards that we know were used to animate armor back during the war. Those gem shards are pieces of people, and yet they were used as weapons in a conflict, because even the crystal gems sometimes see other people as just tools and objects. And we know for a fact that that stems from Homeworld. We do know for a fact from the End of an Era art book that one of the intentions for Homeworld, for its culture, was that they use literal people as objects. The little comb gems, for example, the statue gems that we saw there, the gems that act as instrumentation, those are real people, real sapient people. They're not some kind of like gem robots without brains. They're real sapient people built specifically to be tools and objects for other quote-unquote better people. The wall gems and the door gems that we saw throughout the halls in Homeworld would fall under this category as well. And that's because Rebekah Sugar always found the idea of people being used as objects scary, creepy, and she wanted to work it into her story. And considering how many elements she had in mind from the very beginning, I think it's entirely reasonable to assume that she might have had that idea in mind as early as when they were putting together Cheeseburger Backpack. Because it's not as if those statues are just one-offs. We see other similar statues in the ruins of Homeworld the first time we actually go to Homeworld. And it's actually specifically that got me thinking about where we had seen other gems which had odd bodies like that. Bodies which could be confused, as the Lunar Sea Spire statues were for a long time, as fusions. Because, quite frankly, the only gems with really weird body proportions are fusions. Like, I'm thinking about Fluorite most of all here, obviously, because she doesn't look anything like a regular humanoid gem. But even something like Alexandrite, or even just Sardonyx, or Sunstone to a degree also, those are all fusion gems who have odd body proportions or odd mechanical things about their bodies above and beyond just what I would think of when I hear the term extra body parts, right? So it seems entirely reasonable to me that a gem created to be an interesting looking statue could be made with an odd anatomy that might get confused for a fusion's anatomy. In fact, we see statues like that on Homeworld. Here's one from the concept art in End of an Era. Like, even if those Lunar Sea Spire statues weren't literal gems, we know for a fact, that some statues made by Homeworld, at least on Homeworld itself, are living gems. This is a thing that they do. But I'm sure you guys are sitting there thinking, well, AJ, that's all well and good, and yes, that is a thing that literally happens, but that doesn't prove anything in this situation, because gems don't have real physical bodies. Their bodies are holograms made of hard light. So if a Lunar Sea Spire statue gem, if their body started to erode, they'd just poof back into their gemstone. But I thought of that because, frankly, I don't think that's how this particular style of gem works. I think this particular style of gem has a body that is entirely made up of their gemstone. Hence why when their body starts to erode, their gemstone would eventually stop functioning. And I think that maybe not the statue gems on Homeworld, because we don't really see enough of how they function, but at the very least, the little comb gems and the wall gems and the door gems all support this idea. Because, simply put, we know for a fact that Yellow Diamond was using her ability to permanently change the holographic avatars of gems on Homeworld to help the gems on Homeworld be able to function better in this new gem society. We saw that in SU Future. And yet we see one of the wall gems, while it is detached from the wall and able to move around, it's still a piece of wall. Its body hasn't been modified into something more functional. And there are, of course, ways to explain why this might be the case. Maybe that gem wanted to keep its old form for sentimentality reasons or for self-identity reasons, or maybe there was just a line. There was just a waiting list of gems waiting to get in and have their form modified by Yellow, and that gem's number hadn't come up yet. But I would argue, well, the first is entirely valid, and I can't refute that. The second doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Because you would think that before Yellow moved on to trying to fix gem experiments, she would have helped everybody on the planet who was already, quote-unquote, still alive, right? So I think that it is actually more likely than that first option That gem was put there to show us that some gems do not have bodies that yellow diamond can alter, whether temporarily or permanently. Because I think that wall gem is actually made of stone, that its entire body is part of its gemstone. After all, we do know that aside from just general wear and tear, some kinds of energy can cause gems to poof. And it would really suck if you had like an energy surge or something, and all of the walls holding up the ceilings in your palace or whatever suddenly disappeared and the ceiling fell on you and crushed you or something. So it makes sense from a functional standpoint, from a functionality standpoint, that those wall gems and those door gems, the ones that are literally holding up the ceilings and upper floors of these various diamond palaces, would be made so that they don't have that particular design flaw. And while, of course, this isn't as severe a consequence, I think, it would also really suck for the diamonds if their entertainment or their art or their hair care products suddenly disappeared out of nowhere. So it would make sense that that same feature would be built into them as well. And it's not as if we don't have an example of a gem, a type of gem that is entirely made of gemstone. The pebbles are a type of gem that are entirely made of gemstone. They are stones that are literally animated by the fluid from a diamond. Rather than having a gemstone that projects a body, their entire body is the stone that was the source of them. That stone becomes their body. We see it happen. Like, it's absolutely bonkers to think about it, but this, I think, is by far the best theory we have for what those Lunar Sea Spire statues actually are. Like, it certainly works way better than assuming that at some point cross-gem fusion, the kind of fusion that would produce gems with extra body parts, went from being acceptable by Homeworld to being unacceptable by it. Recently enough that those statues were built at the Lunar Sea Spire at the beginning of the occupation of Earth, but that Blue Diamond also had as violent a reaction as she did to seeing a cross-gem fusion form what would only amount to a few years later. And how crazy is it that even after all of these years and all of this time, something can crop up in the show and its supplementary material, because I did pull some stuff from End of an Era for this video, obviously, that takes something from early in the show that a lot of us had assumed was just early installment weirdness at this point, and makes it make sense. How crazy is that? Like, Steven Universe is a flawed show. I'm not going to deny that. I've actually been thinking about that a lot, wondering if maybe I should do a video about some of the areas where I think Steven Universe is flawed above and beyond what I've talked about before. But it can't be denied that it is still pretty gosh darn great, because it's the kind of show where stuff like that can happen. Unfortunately, because the show is not ongoing anymore, I'm probably never going to get confirmation one way or another regarding whether or not this theory is correct, which bums me out, because I really think I'm right about this one. I've got a really good feeling about it. I'd like for this one to be confirmed one way or the other. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't be. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. It's probably not going to happen, though, which sucks. But still, man, I had fun putting this video together for you guys 3 whole times. I didn't have to edit it the other 2 times, so it wasn't 3 whole times. But you get the point of what I'm saying. It was still fun. I still enjoyed putting this theory together. I still like putting theories about this show together. So if you guys have any theory ideas that you'd like me to touch on, please let me know in the comment section down below. Otherwise, what did you think of this theory? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over my Discord or my Tumblr, links in the description. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.